Reading and visualizing gender, understanding the terms, reading and visualizing gender. So, before we look into the meaning of the reading, let us clarify that every word has a connotation and denotation. Denotation is a word's primary or literal meaning, such as a dictionary defines. Connotation is its secondary or accompanying meaning that the word implies or suggests. For example, home is a place where we live, but home also suggests cosigns, love, affection, privacy. Thus, a phrasal expression at home denotes to be inside the home, but it connotates being comfortable and at ease. While reading a text or a picture, we can give a superficial reading or we can delve deeper to find a suggested meaning. Connotation is usually influenced by the social and the cultural realities. We take following two lines from an Indian school textbook. Ram, go to school, Radha, clean the room. The superficial meaning is simple. The two children are being assigned work according to the accepted gender norms. But the implied meaning is different. Ram is the boy, he is supposed to go to school. Radha is the girl who is denied this privilege and she has to clean the room. These two simple lines have deeper gender implication, and also the language is sexist. It discriminates and devalues a girl. It centers on the gender role. Gender role is a set of norms or culturally defined expectation that define how girls and boys are supposed to behave. Close reading. Reading is a multivalent word. It does not only mean reading a given line or text to message. It connotates what is hidden behind the obvious. Every word is invested with meaning. Every sentence can be interpreted in various forms as per the suggested meaning. Thus, literal description becomes a tool that helps us to see a situation and lead us through the multiple meaning of the language. For example, a male character is a story or play or novel calls a woman babe. Babe is a diminutive word. A baby or babe is small, helpless, and dependent. There is no doubt that this is a term of endearment, but it reduces a woman to a non entity. It displays the authority of the man, and in its ultimate analysis, it speaks of the male domination. Till recently, women did not object to this appellation because it was considered a flattering personal compliment. But when feminism made women aware of the effect of language and the power of play, women realized that this is not a compliment to their sex. They found it offensive and took objection to it. Likewise, words like queen, princess, honey, kitten, and doll are insulting, and women have started rejecting these as they are sex privatization. Stereotype. These appellations have superficial attributes and they encourage men to see women as helpless and dependent. The side effect is if women are described only by such superficial attributes, conversely, men appear more individual, strong on whom women depend. Next, we have the false individuality. In this process of gender attribution, women acquire false individuality. This individuality hinders the development of the real personality. What do we mean by the false individuality? To explain this, we ask you a question: what are the attributes of a doll? It is dumb, it is a plaything, and it has no personality and no intelligence. All dolls are like that, do not have individuality. Conversely, it means women are look alike, they are dumb, they have no opinion, and they are playthings. This is its implied meaning. Socially, women are expected to express their individuality through their physical appearance or beauty or through carrying out gender roles. They are thus stereotyped as a class, they look alike, they think alike, and they are beautiful but have no brains. Such socio-culture parameters keep sex oppression going on. The image becomes extension of the oneself. It gets hard to distinguish a real person from his latest image. Men see women not only as an image but as an the image of the sex appeal. Look at some of the fairy tales, the story of Cinderella, for example. We all have liked it since childhood but read it closely and you will realize that Cinderella is a beautiful but she is helpless. She has sex appeal but she is almost doll like and she needs a prince to rescue her. Through fairy tales such as these, we are still taught that we are princesses. Someday our prince will come, we will be picked up, carried off to a palace to live happily ever after. Which is visualizing. The dictionary meaning to visualize is to form a picture of something or someone in our mind. This is a mental image. Visualization is a problematic word and difficult to define. The purpose of visualization is to connect what we have imagined or what picture we have formed of it. It is based on idea formation and is abstract. The image is not visible. When we visualize, we transform the image from the invisible to the visible. Visualization has to produce an image, but this image, as you see it, it may not be so clear to the other. The most important criteria is that visualization must provide a way to learn something about the given idea or language. Visualization helps us to create a mental picture. How it works with the gender can be understood with the following example. How would you visualize a girl or a woman? Probably you will make a stereotypical mental image: weak, submissive, emotional, quiet, engaged in the household work, nurturing children, not much educated. How would you visualize a boy or a man? The stereotypical picture is aggressive, assertive, dominating, loud, messy, scientific mind, outdoor life, interested in games and sports. These mental images are the socio-cultural and may be different in different cultures. In many textbook images or magazine pictures, you will find the father sitting comfortably and reading a newspaper while the mother slogging in the kitchen. Here we can visualize that boys and men are presented as universal figures in which women girls are invisibly included. The image of the mother is reduced to as the performer of the household chores. She does not have an individual personality and thus shown to have no choice. This type of approach encodes women's fears of public spaces and men's incompetence in household work. Further, this has implications for division of the labor, childcare, and the household work is for the women. Public life is for men. To explain what we just said, now we give you below two pictures. Look at them and visualize the scene and interpret it with the tool of the gender. Researchers have observed that stereotypical conceptions of the girls and boys occur even in school. Usually, teachers also have patronizing attitudes towards girl students. They give more space to boys. The girls' performance in science subjects are not as highly valued as the boys, and this outlook can ultimately have consequences for girls' attitudes towards science. Reading silence. Women's silence has been the subject of much debate. Silence means those statements that are in the background, that are not expressed. Some critics say that women are capable of speaking out, yet they cannot do not speak about. That means they have no choice. About Indian women, many critics argue that the public voice of the Indian woman has long been stifled by the male dominated society. She has been led to believe in her self image as a sober, silent, docile being. Her silence on the problem she faces is connected to this self image. Women need encouragement to shake off this imposed reserve and speak of her problems and the solutions. Women writers today are speaking up. They are even exposing rape cases and the aftermath of such exploitation. You welcome with a smile on you and a frame in your hand. I was to fit into there like a circus animal. The social stereotype frame and fitting into frame means fitting into the gender role. Beena Agarwal wrote Sita, speak your side of the story. We know the other too well. Sita speak has been silent, but now she must speak out and must know the side of the story. What is the story of the oppression? Why women's language? It is usually observed that women use different language for their literary works than men do. By using their own language, women challenge the main repression of the feminine and attack the dominant ideology. Women's writing has often been ridiculed as without substance. Critics and readers have ignored women or acknowledged them for the inferior, but in women's writing we can discern sisterhood and women's ability to empathize, which is absent in the men's writing. We in the term women are writing if only to remind us of the social conditioning and conditions under which women wrote and are still writing. That women are viewed as being incessant gossips or chatterers distract from the fact that in the world of the written word they are silenced, censored, persecuted, marginalized. When they seek to go beyond the topics allocated to them as good women, feminist criticism questions that accepted the conceptual structure. It wants to decode and demystify all the distinguished questions and answers that have always shadowed the connections between gender and gender. Language is not a carrier of the ideas but is a shaper of the ideas. It is a means of self expression and is also correlated with the socio cultural facts of one's upbringing, environment, class, nationality. This is called the language socialization. which means people and how they are expected to behave socially. Women as a category employ language differently from the way men do, and hence women's language is believed to display their female identity. An example from literature can illustrate how language creates and sustains the gender. The dialogue below is from the Sashi Deshapan's novel The Dark Holds No Terror. A mother is addressing her 7-year-old daughter. The words simple, but when you visualize gender role, you find their real implications. Mother, don't go out in the sun, you will get even darker. Sorry, daughter, who cares? We have to care if you don't. We have to get you mad. I don't want to get married. You can't live forever with us. Warner, you can't. And Dhruva, her brother, he's different. He's a boy. Marriage is a woman's final destiny for which she is prepared from her childhood. She has to be fair skinned. This is a definition of the masculine and the feminine. Saru can't live with her parents. Dhruva can because he is a boy. Saru is ranked at a lower level by her brother. Mother's ideas and values legitimize sexual of her daughter. She has to be pretty, fair, and the married. Femininity comes to signify a rule and image, a value imposed on women by the logic of the masculine system. With the advancement of the women's educational standards and gender consciousness, women have recently started to speak out. They have shed the inhibitions and they talk about the experiences of the gender discrimination in their everyday lives. This is how they represent their side of the issue. What is representation? Now that we have explored the areas of the language and the visualization and the need for close reading, we shall examine representation. The simple dictionary meaning of representation is the act of representing, presenting against something that represents an image or a symbol like a verbal picture. For example, the portrait of women in films or newspapers can be stated as a representation of the woman in the film and the newspaper. Other synonyms of the representation are the portrayal, depiction, rendition, characterization, and so on. Representation also means an act of speaking or acting on behalf of someone. Representation covers the fields of literature, gender studies, politics, sociology, cultural studies, and many other disciplines. But we shall restrict ourselves to the relationship between gender and representation. Imagination plays a significant role in the representation. In literature, it helps in the engendering and engendering women, engendering and re-engendering. In films and TV serials and advertisement, women's representation is visual. Nowadays, television has centrality to our daily lives. In fact, to our culture, it is like the language we speak. It is simple yet complex and difficult to understand and analyze. The representation of women in the media is varied. Sometimes it is according to the cultural norms, sometimes as per the new ideas, and sometimes it breaks all norms. The mother, for example, is represented as a patient, all loving presence, but she can be very strong despite her several problems. We know how the woman is represented in art and sculpture. All these representation are gendered and need to be understood from a gender perspective. Representation asks the question who is speaking on behalf of whom. In gender studies, one of the important aspects of representation is to enable women to represent themselves. There was a time when women were represented by men because women were not allowed to speak or write. Now, with the social culture changes, they have seized the opportunity to represent their case, their problems, and their viewpoints. Representations are the based on the social realities, therefore, they are social constructs. They can only change when the overall picture changes. Self and the other. When there is a self, there is the other. In literature, women have been treated as objects rather than as the subjects. As subject, one loses one's individuality, one becomes the other. Men are often portrayed as powerful and in control of the thing. Man is the subject, the decision maker. Woman has a secondary position in the patriarchal system. Man is in a speaking position, so he is the self. All those about whom or for whom he speaks are the other. The speaker has the active role and an element of control. Women are deprived of this central active role and are therefore muted. The right to represent. Women have been striving to represent themselves in the contemporary context. Women are writing about what they feel and how they feel. They are giving their own account of their experience, thus allowing previously silent voices to be heard and also to make patriarchal structures aware of their joys and sorrows. problems and the strengths in gender studies. The issue of the representation is significant one for research as well as for the political activity. Representation was an important factor for access to power. Just a few lines from a short story can illustrate how men expresses themselves frankly. For the past 2 days, Khadija is living in unbearable pain. Even though there were no sign of her giving birth to a baby, she had to keep the pain to herself as much as possible. At times, she felt like screaming, but she was dreaded by the thought that others might hear it. This is a typical female experience, and only a woman can be assessed into analyzing literature, media, and other fields of examine women's representation by both men and women is important to ensure in the future that the balance in the picture power relation. How women represent themselves. Social tradition has all along looked at women as weak, submissive, and dependent. The written words ask the question, how do others see us? Readers would interpret us. When men present women's picture, they look at them from their own angle. But women want to pen down their own perceptions and realities that are relevant to their lives. Women may represent themselves as a group or as individuals in written or oral text. They may also be represented by others. Representation as a political connotation also. When women struggle to get representation in political field, they are struggling for the right to represent and be represented. In sociology, representation allows them to express their views of the social situations. In literature, it stands for their own writings in which they can express their innermost feelings and experiences. For example, women writers from the Dalit section society know the pain of the double marginalization and the double victimization. In their writings, these women depict first-hand knowledge of their problem. Men writing about such situations can offer a view from the outside. Women want to represent themselves and to avoid being misrepresented. Closely allied to representation is the problem of the misrepresentation. How is one misrepresented? Systems are always partial and always subject to interpretation. In the process, there is likelihood of misrepresentation and misinterpretation. To be dismissive of women and their problem in misrepresentation, likewise to portray them frivolously or to see their problems as non-issues, to deride their emotion and sentiments or behavioral pattern, all come under misrepresentation. Writings must expose the real experiences of the real woman. If we get these from the woman's own perspective, chances of the misrepresentation becomes less. Women's experiences are different from men's, but difference does not mean inequality and therefore should not signify unequal relationships. A correct representation of gender will help restructure socio-cultural perception of the woman. Let us take a small example of misrepresentation in the Indian social tradition. We call a woman Devi as a goddess. She is to be held in high esteem and kept on a pedestal, but the social reality is different. She is a real woman with the real problems. To give her the status of a goddess means to divest her of the human pains and pleasure. It is necessary to explore how women define themselves and are defined as a woman within the various systems of the representation. Women have their own unique identity if we enable them to define themselves. Challenges to victimization. Women are burdened by the notions of the femininity, respectability of the honor because they shape the crucial question of the sexuality. In literature, language plays an important role challenging the stereotypes. Women writers are challenging the victimization of women characters and seeking new balance of the poor between the sexes. Women writers wish men to understand that women are not commodities to be possessed. This is a kind of revolt against social norm that beat inequality. In the film Fire 1996, for example, Deepa Mehta uses a feminism in a manner that does not fit into the normal socially accepted discourses. Representation of the lesbianism in the film generated anger. Representation in the cinema requires both language and visual depiction in other disciplines like literature and social independent language to delineate reality. The ability to use language, whether oral or written, is one of the most important characteristics of the human beings. In analyzing language, we go beyond the boundaries of grammatical analysis of a text. We are aware of the grammar, but we see functions within the language as it is spoken or written, and also how words function within the context. Focus is also on the social action of the language of the users communicating in a particular social and the cultural context. We know by now the language is a tool. Gender attribution. Is it process? In this process, society assigns sex or gender onto an individual with or without knowing concretely that sex that person is or what gender identity as.